conundrum. Those stories and so much more coming up on FreightWaves Now. And welcome to this Friday edition of FreightWaves Now. I'm Anthony Smith here with the one and only Thomas Wasson.
It's a whole week of Wasson, folks, and it's Friday. Get ready. Going to have a very fun, action-packed show. We're going to have Alan Adler joining us for a little bit about Cummins going after the hydrogen engine. We'll also have Pawal Wencel from Metafora talking about customer service, and finally, of course, the economy lately coming back in the next hour. But first, a lot is going on, especially when it's talking about the rail. The top story of the year is the Senate yesterday approved a bill that effectively ends the labor dispute between unions and railroads. Now only requiring President Biden's signature. Joanna Marsh is here to talk a little bit about what happened yesterday. Welcome, Joanna.
Morning. How are you all?
Doing pretty well. It is indeed Friday, so we're super hyped. For those who are catching up to the situation, did they get the extra time off, or are they only getting a raise?
So right now they're getting the raise. They did not get the time off. The Senate voted down that measure, which I think was introduced by Bernie Sanders, and instead went for the measure that calls for what do you call it? It's Friday morning. That calls for taking the negotiated agreement that was negotiated in September. So it has the raise, but does not have the sick leave.
And Joanna,
at least address. Sorry.
Oh, no, perfect. That was kind of where we're leading into. With this, do we see that there's any way that we could get some type of deal reached before this actual bill goes into effect?
Yeah. So it's pretty much probably going to be signed by President Joe Biden. I also wanted to correct a thing I said actually earlier. The agreement does address sick leave by giving the unions an extra day, but it didn't address it to the extent that the unions had wanted. So it does address sick leave, actually, the existing agreement. But I was actually kind of surprised by how quickly everything went. I think, when Biden said on Monday that, that the unions should accept this agreement, or not, that the union, that the Congress should compel the unions and the railroads to have this particular agreement without the sick leave attached. I think that kind of set the ball in motion for things moving fairly quickly. And so it's expected that Biden will sign the one that was passed by the House and the Senate, especially because if he doesn't, then starting later this weekend, what would have happened is some of the rail shipments for hazardous materials would have to be scaled back because no one wants to have a train stuck in the middle of nowhere, carrying dangerous goods. So I think time is of the essence in terms of Biden's signature.
And putting this in context, especially with an act of Congress and the executive branch passing this, I think, was it the first time maybe 91 or 93, I think, since Congress has gotten involved with the rail? Is this kind of something where we're looking at a precedent for future negotiations, or maybe just a one-off given, political timing?
Yeah, I think a lot of it was just kind of the situation was just how conditions are like nowadays in terms of, you have the element of PSR, precision scheduled railroading, which, didn't exist in the to the extent that it is existing now in this most recent negotiation round. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next negotiation round, which is actually not too far away. think it's like 2024 where they actually have to start up over again, because the interesting thing about this agreement is that it's retroactive. So they've been going without a new contract. The unions have been doing that since 2020, and so. So a lot of the stuff, some of the payments are retroactive and stuff like that. So, so they'll be under discussion for a new contract actually fairly soon. I mean, sooner than you think. So that could, I'm sorry, yeah.
Oh, no, I mean, around those future negotiations, does this intervention kind of take some steam away from that, just kind of putting them in a place of saying, hey, it doesn't matter if you guys reach a deal or not, you have a deadline, and we'll decide what's best for you?
Yeah, I think from what I've heard from the unions, I think this is actually kind of emboldened them to pursue the sick leave measures that they're looking for. Like I said, they did get some paid sick leave addressed in this new agreement that was negotiated in September, but not to the extent that the unions had wanted, and so. And the railroads had argued that the existing sick leave policies were negotiated under different conditions in the past. And so I think definitely the issue of sick leave, especially now, after we've had the COVID-19 pandemic, will sort of color how things go forward, whether or not the sick leave will be addressed in the next bargaining round or under a different negotiation context. I'm not quite sure, but I think, I think this, this. It'll be interesting to see what lessons people have learned in this past round.
Also makes me kind of curious, you have 2024 coming up for the deadline. I wonder if some of the impacts on why we couldn't, unions couldn't get that extra sick time is related to that precision scheduled railroading. 30% less headcount, longer trains, almost nearly twice as long. It ain't World War II anymore, Looking into that, if you're a union person, what's some of their takeaways? Are you going to wait till 2024 and say, oh, we'll do it again and try to get our 7 days off? Or is there going to be a push from investors who would potentially be more willing to have a higher headcount at the expense of profits?
Yeah, I think that'll be one of the interesting issues to look into, as the weeks and months kind of play out, because the issue of the service issues related to precision scheduled railroading haven't quite gone away yet. Obviously, the railroads argue that they're that implementing PSR, as they call it, which is kind of a way to streamline operations, it's kind of a crude definition, has enabled them to be more efficient in terms of running the network. But there's actually a colleague of mine had sent me a really good article, I think in New York Magazine the other day, about sort of how kind of with the idea of how PSR, you've had the fallout with the unions, obviously, in terms of one reason why railroads haven't granted the sick leave is because PSR having that schedule kind of doesn't have a lot of give. So there's limited scheduling availability or flexibility, I guess, for the unions in that sense. So you have that angle. And then you also have the shipper angle, which is that, some shippers would argue, and actually the article argues as well, that that PSR hasn't hasn't achieved sort of those improving service to shippers, and that service issue isn't going away. I mean, later this month, the Surface Transportation Board will be having Union Pacific come in for a public hearing on why they are still issuing embargoes, or why they're issuing a lot of embargoes. And of course, this past year you've had all those service service disruption issues, coming before the STB, and so it's So what is what is the next stage of PSR, or will it be called PSR or something else? Is a good question. We'll see what the answer is.
And on the other side of that spectrum, do we see any kind of pressures or any more conversations potentially having around introducing more technology and relying a little bit less on that human capital aspect?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's also another ongoing issue as well. I believe the public comment period for a proposed rule on whether the Federal Railroad Administration should require train crews to have 2 or more people. That's coming up. Obviously, the railroads and the past administration under Donald Trump had. There was a proposed rulemaking out on 2-man crews, and then the past administration took that proposed regulation away. But of course, it's back again, and so that issue hasn't gone away, and it'll continue. And I think one of the union's argument is how. That railroads might use automation with the idea of reducing crews even further, or which would result in the existing workforce still there, having their roles expanded, because when if someone leaves a company and then you have to have someone still fulfill that's the duties of the person who's left, and so you kind of have more work to do. So.
Closing thoughts here. We've got about a minute left. We've got all this movement from the top, Congress legislation passing it, unions ratifying it. Now it has to go down to the rank and file. Is there still a risk that, in spite of all these sayings that, we will return to work, will there be a wild card potentially and some folks will walk out anyway?
Yeah. I mean, I think the Railway Labor Act kind of prevents that opportunity for union members to go on strike. If they did go on strike, at that point, it's illegal. So you would, you could face sort of, be getting slapped by the courts, or you could lose your job. So I think, don't quote me on that either. But I think it would be harder for union members to go on strike if they wanted to at this point, because you pretty much can't by law.
Thank you so much, Joanna. I've been informed that it is in fact not a wild card, but a wild cat. So for those of you who want to know, wildcat, when you decide to just take it upon yourself. So thank you so much. We'll definitely keep an eye on, see if any of these rank and file decide to pull a audible on the line of scrimmage, and see how this labor negotiation goes. Joanna, thank you so much for coming on.
All right, thank you. Have a good weekend.
I do like me some Wildcat when it comes to football, but I mean, this could cause some chaos for sure.
True. I'm from Appalachia too, so someone out there, one of our viewers is probably like, that's good eating.
Right now, we're going to toss it over to the wall because we have our first carrier update of the morning.
Welcome into this carrier update. I'm Tony Mulvey, joined by Donnie Gilbert. Donnie, Thanksgiving was a week ago. We're kind of that 7-day moving average is kind of erasing that 0 day, and you see it with volumes picking back up to
pre-Thanksgiving.
Yep.
And we're about, a little bit over 11,000, 11,250, somewhere around in there. And then we hit that we pick up that 0 day, so it drops down. And now that we've recovered, I told you, kind of use this piece right here to piece it down, and you'll find out where we're going to be, where we're at 10,087. So we want volumes to be above 10,000 to say that we're still kind of healthy. The problem that's going on right now is with all the overcapacity from last year, where everybody thought they'd make $1 million in trucking real fast, decided to go out and buy trucks, has pushed rejection rates down to, now this is the average of dry van, reefer, flatbed, everything together, to 4.10%, which is very, very weak.
Yep.
So this volumes are still high, but you can tell, you know, if you go back to November, we started November with higher volumes than we finished November with.
Yeah, that was going to be my point, was you look at the peak over there for Thanksgiving. If you think that is the peak of the truckload market, compare it to where it was in October, and it's not very peaky. And that's the key, because if you put this over a few years, you see it move up, but then you see December, volumes always fall off in December, right? Contracted volumes.
Actually, we're going to look at that here shortly, very shortly. But you are correct. Let's go ahead and go to the next chart here. This is our seasonality for volumes.
Yep.
And if you look at the last part of December, you see volumes fall off. Why? Because Black Friday normally kicks off the shopping season. But over the past couple of years, they've pushed it back a week, pushed it back 2 weeks, and everybody's trying to start first. So everything needs to be prepared for about November 15th for shopping. It's got to be there. So this is really the true peak of the shipping season for that last minute getting it there. It actually starts really shipping from the boats even earlier, then to DCs, then onto the stores. Now, we get into December. This right here, this is just restocking.
Yeah.
This is, hey, we sold a lot of this, send me a truck with those on there, and we'll get it restocked back to where it was. So you'll see volumes start dropping off. When we hit about December 12th, 14th, it's racing your chairs up and down the aisles at work when you're in the logistics business. It starts to drop off very bad. Now, as we get into November, January and February, volumes typically continue to fall, and then it starts to turn around. In February, you'll see normally a little bit of a turnaround because of like spring items, lawnmowers, patio furniture, pool supplies, all that starting to pick up to get ready for March, April, and May. So as we get into that season, it's going to be a very tough time, Tony.
Yeah, and you look at this, and this is more contract, or heavier, really tracks the contract market. Spot market, I mean, there is still, if you think peak for contracts is around Thanksgiving, there is maybe more activity in the spot market in December than on the contract side. So, but I mean, you're just not seeing a reaction in any way because you see rejection so low.
There's normally a peak in spot market in December is because there's time-sensitive freight they're trying to get there before Christmas.
Yep.
The TVs, the PlayStations, the gaming, and trying to get their stuff back to the retail brick and mortar stores or online sales. Well, we're not seeing that this year. It's not strong enough. So when we're not seeing those time-sensitive freight, the spot market's going to continue to go down. We'll bring this one chart up here. We'll just kind of look at it real quick, and then we'll start. Actually, it's going to be the next one. Don't worry about it. We'll start with this one next time, but we're going to get in and look at what's going on with contracted freight, and you're going to see that peak that you're talking about, but it's going to continue to drop as well.
Awesome stuff, Donnie. Thank you for this update. Right now, we'll toss it over to Sydney Edwards with a look at this morning's top stories.
With a first check of our headlines for this Friday morning, I'm Sydney Edwards. Now, as forewarned 2 weeks ago at an investor conference, declines in less than truckload tonnage accelerated during November. After the market closed on Wednesday, Saia reported tonnage down 7.7% year over year for the month, following a 3% year over year decline in October. The carrier's daily tonnage first inflected negativity in September after modest gains were recorded in July and August. The update came in below analyst expectations, resulting in estimate cuts and a rating change. Saia's November tonnage result was the combination of an 8.6% year-over-year decline in shipments, which was partially offset by a 1% increase in weight per shipment. During October, the carrier shipments were only down 4.4% year-over-year. The Senate voted 80-15 yesterday to intervene on a potential rail strike. It is the first time since 1991 that Congress has intervened on a rail labor dispute. The bill does not include paid sick leave, which was the key demand by rail unions. The Senate rejected a measure proposed by Senator Bernie Sanders to include 7 days of paid sick leave for rail workers by a vote of 52-43. 60 votes were required to pass. The House of Representatives approved a separate bill to guarantee those 7 days of paid sick leave on Wednesday. It appears that Biden will approve legislation that does not include this sick leave. And yesterday, Elon Musk unveiled the Tesla Semi on an all-electric Class 8 truck that the automaker hopes will shake up the commercial transportation industry. Musk introduced the Semi during a live event at the company's Nevada Gigafactory. He said the Semi is fast to accelerate, fast to brake, a step change improvement in what's currently like to drive a semi-truck. Musk said it has 3 times the power of any diesel truck on the road right now, and he said that the Semi is easy to drive as a Model 3 and could be driven with no training. Now you can find details on these stories and even more happening at FreightWaves.com and on our FreightWaves app. If you're watching on our YouTube channel, don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated. You can get the full FreightWaves TV experience by heading on over to tv.freightwaves.com. We have Alan Adler joining us after this break, so stay tuned.
The 2023 Freight Tech 25 list is filled with meaningful innovators from across the industry who are helping shape what the future of supply chain will look like. Check out the full list of these companies and all the latest Freight Tech news at FreightWaves.com.
Hold on a second, Tony. See that? No scrapes, no scuffs, no damage. Thank you. Because we make sure each pallet is touched as few times as possible and that is handled with care, no matter where it's going. That's the precision you get from a nationwide LTL freight company with over 35 years of industry-leading experience, an entire team that's driven to deliver on time and damage-free.
XPO, your freight, first.
What are you doing up there, Bert?
The RXO folks want us to demo their technology.
That's smart.
Yeah, not really. My beak doesn't work so well on this tablet.
Well, they're paying us now, so.
I know, here goes. Our customers' freight is seamlessly moved anywhere in North America using RXO's digital platform to access over 1.5 million trucks.
That sounded good.
I think I broke my beak.
Massive capacity, cutting-edge technology. RXO.
Hello and welcome back to this Friday edition of FreightWaves NOW. I'm Anthony Smith, joined by the one and only Thomas Wasson. And today we have a lot of amazing guests. Right now we're going to welcome on our next guest, and that is the one and only John Kingston. He's going to talk about some of the employment numbers that just got released this week. John, thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Oh, quick correction here.
like we
We're having a
have
little bit
Alan.
of technical difficulties. It is indeed actually Alan Adler. We were playing an elaborate practical joke on both parties. So we actually, John will be coming up later on in the show, but this is the truck tech. Alan Adler, of course, is our Detroit bureau chief, and it looks like the first thing is Cummins is getting invested into hydrogen. Alan, what are some of your thoughts going on right there with that big OEM manufacturer?
Well, hi guys, and sorry we can't make the TV part work today, but I'll never admit to being John Kingston, no matter how many times you try. I would say that this is not new for Cummins, that is hydrogen. They've been pursuing hydrogen for quite some time. What's new here today and what we're talking about in the newsletter is sort of the go-to-market approach, if you will. It's not really a marketing play, but we're already talking about a new engine, a hydrogen internal combustion engine, not a fuel cell, for 2027. Now, that's a ways out, right? I mean, that's a few years from now. And yet Cummins has allowed a lot of information about this engine. Some early customers, including Werner Enterprises, that have ordered this truck, because for the first time, they have some certainty around what the global emissions regulations will look like. I spoke with Shrikant Padmanabhanan, I hope I said that right, please forgive me if I didn't, who's the president of the engine group when I was in Europe back in September. And we discussed this whole idea that you've got what he calls a 20-year coincidence in the making, where global regulations around emissions are getting into sync. And that is allowing Cummins to build a new engine, or basically from the ground up, a new hydrogen-powered 15-liter engine, actually started as a natural gas-powered engine in China, and then basically bring that here, use different fuels and things like that, because they've got the data that suggests that this is going to be successful. And so that's one of the reasons why you're hearing about something that's so far out there now.
And Alan, as we look at this, I mean, what does this partnership really look like as we continue to move forward? Is it something that you see really kind of expanding within the U.S. or really taking more of a presence in Europe for the time being?
Well, this is a U.S. application that's coming, the hydrogen-powered ICE engine, if you will, and so the customers are here. The second thing, besides sort of the harmonization around regulations, is that customers, fleet customers are making a lot of claims and promises about getting to sort of zero emissions or reducing dramatically their pollution output. And projects like this, or products like this, allow that to happen. You can get maybe not all the way to your goal, but you can get a long way towards it by using things like hydrogen. Burning hydrogen rather than gasoline or propane or diesel in an engine for a better emissions profile. So that's really what Cummins is doing. They said, if this was just an upgrade to an engine project or something like that, their engineers wouldn't let them talk about it because they wouldn't have any data. But for example, in China, they already know from some of the data requirements how these engines are performing. And so they have enough confidence that customers can say, yep, we know that's going to work for us. So it's okay to talk about it now. But again, this is a question that was on my mind for a while, is how come a company like Cummins, which I regard as being pretty conservative, would ever talk about a future project like this so early? Even before this, they were talking about bringing the natural gas version of this engine to the U.S. and building it in New York State, from China and putting it in production here in 2024. And those 2 years that I've mentioned, 24 and 27, are both significant because there are new emission regulations in the U.S. that go into effect in those years. And this is a product that, these are two products, I should say, that could address that.
And looking at risks, I know right now that they're developing, we've got natural gas engines, we have the electric battery packs for the EVs, we have hydrogen. Is there any inherent risk with almost, what if you get it wrong and everyone picks one or the other? Is it beneficial to diversify, or is this something where we're kind of in the Wild West and we just don't know how it's going to pan out?
Well, I think, again, Thomas, I think you're pretty confident of the performance of the engine. I mean, the X15 has been around Cummins for a number of years. It is a proven powertrain that runs on diesel. And again, remember, we're going to have a lot of diesel engines for many, many years. So you'll be talking about, relatively small numbers of these engines. It's not like the industry is going to switch over to it all of a sudden. I think it's sort of on a timeline or a journey, if you will, toward getting the cost of battery electric trucks and fuel cell powered, hydrogen fuel cell trucks down to something closer to parity with diesel. Right now, everything is heavily incentivized, and that's the reason why you are seeing some of the adoption, because, people are helping pay for it. If these technologies had to stand on their own, they probably would be standing in the corner, because there just wouldn't be anybody willing to spend, for example, $1 million on a fuel cell truck right now, unless they were getting substantial subsidies and could sort of see a way to use, one or two of them in their fleet. But something like a hydrogen internal combustion engine or a hybrid like Hyliion is doing with natural gas and electricity, those things are pretty good transitional technologies to get us to the point of really bringing down truck pollution. But it won't happen overnight. These things are, I don't want to call them stopgaps. I don't think that's exactly accurate, but I do think that they are steps that can be taken along the route to getting to zero emissions.
Alan, keeping to the truck tech name here, speaking about tech, what is that race looking like with autonomous between Aurora and Uber Freight right now?
Well, they're working together. They're expanding a program that that they started a few months back, basically using the Uber Freight load board and platform, and then running real loads autonomously. That is with a safety driver from the Dallas-Fort Worth area out to El Paso. That's about 600 miles, and they picked up a new customer that does a lot of cardboard and packaging materials, which is important around this time of year. So it's an expansion of something they had in place already. Again, good timing for the holidays.
And we did recently have, I don't know if this one's going to be in the newsletter yet, but Tesla just released, media about their recent run, 81,000 pounds total, 500 miles, and a cool B-roll to boot. Are you going to be looking into the recent launch of the Tesla Cybertruck and kind of what some of these implications will be for the overall industry?
Well, our colleague Noy Mahoney has a story this morning on last night's reveal a reveal, I should say, delivery event, I think they called it, where the first trucks are going to a Pepsi operation, actually Frito-Lay operation, which is owned by Pepsi up in Modesto, California. And so, obviously, like with everything Tesla, lots of hype, lots of talk. This truck's delivery is 5 years after they revealed it back in 2017. I'm not sure, because I haven't read in on what Noy wrote from last night, how many more facts they're giving out in terms of, how much is it costing to drive 500 miles under electricity. If they've really solved for this, then it's huge. If there's something, where they had to stop and recharge and things like that, then not so much. I mean, if you had to top off on the route, 500 miles is one of those weird distances where it can be done in 8 hours. So you could be talking about, staying within hours of service regulations for an 8-hour run. I guess we have a lot more to learn once they start building trucks in any kind of numbers. Tesla led the way really in electric vehicles and brought everybody along with it. And now you're starting to see some significant product development, to challenge Tesla's dominance. The Semi will be interesting, because if they really have done what they indicate they've done, then they're going to be right there in that leadership position in the industry, in the trucking space. But you've got others that got out there first. Even our friends at Nikola got their electric truck out before Tesla did. Is that going to matter? I mean, if Tesla really has come up with a way to do this for, kind of 2 kilowatt hours of energy per mile, that's a pretty good number. Well, let's wait and see what we find out as these trucks actually get into regular use.
And Alan, there's plenty more coming up, I'm sure, within your Truck Tech newsletter. Where can people find it, and how can they get on that list?
Okay, well, you can go to FreightWaves.com and look under newsletters and click on Truck Tech. We're out there most Fridays. I think this is our 48th edition today, and that means 1 year since we started. So we took a few holidays off there. And then next month, Truck Tech will go on air. We'll be having a weekly TV show around, we'll cover, we'll have different guests, right? We won't be doing just what was in the newsletter, but we'll be talking to people, hopefully in the news on Wednesday afternoon. So we're looking forward to that. But I think it's FreightWaves.com/truck-tech is how you get the newsletter.
Amazing. And I'm excited for that show coming out because that's taking it to a whole new level. Alan, thanks so much for being here this morning and looking forward to that show.
Okay, thanks, guys. Have a good day.
Right now, we're going to toss it over to Isaiah Buchanan, who has our first hit for the Social Roundabout.
Welcome into Social Roundabout, everyone. I'm Isaiah Buchanan, and in this segment, we take a look at what's trending on social media. We talk about trucks a lot, right? Well, the most famous truck of all is probably Optimus Prime from Transformers. And speaking of Transformers, they just dropped a new trailer for the film Transformers Rise of the Beast yesterday. Here's a look at that trailer right now. So this movie is gonna be coming out next year in June, so in the summer. And usually Peter Cullen is the one who is voicing voices Optimus Prime, the most well-known truck. But now they've actually brought in somebody else to voice him. It's gonna be Ron Perlman who's actually gonna do Optimus Prime now. And Peter Dinklage, you probably will know him from Game of Thrones. He is actually going to be voicing the main villain of the film, Scourge. And so this movie right here is going to incorporate a whole new cast. There's a lot of new Transformers, a lot of the ones from Beast Wars from the animated show back in the 1990s. So you get to see Cheetora, Rhinox, and a bunch of other different Transformers that we haven't actually seen before. So really cool thing that's gonna be coming out next year. Now, switching things up just a little bit, we've all probably heard about what's been going on with Kanye West, and he has made another anti-Semitic comment. Yesterday, he was on the InfoWars podcast with Alex Jones and said, I see some good things about Hitler. And if you look at this tweet right here, somebody tweeted at Elon Musk saying, Elon, please fix Kanye. And he said, I tried my best. Despite that, he again violated our rule against incitement to violence. His account will be suspended. And about an hour after this tweet was posted, Kanye's account was again suspended was suspended off Twitter again. So he is no longer able to tweet out anymore. He got his account back here recently, but again, it has been suspended again. Check out this meme that was also posted on Twitter as well. It says, working as Kanye's manager every 2 hours. And it shows a picture of Ben Affleck holding a cigarette, just looking really stressed. And look, I know our truckers work really hard, but man, being Kanye's manager, that's gotta be a full-time job, and I don't know if anybody could pay me enough to do that. But that's all I have for this edition of Social Roundabout. We're gonna take a quick break, but then we'll be right back with more FreightWaves Now. We're gonna be talking with John Kingston.
When guests come to an event like F3, we know what they want is a chance to show off their products, their swag, and make new partnerships that will last until our next FreightWaves event.
But the problem is there are so many industry events, it can be so hard to find the right one to invest your time and energy in. We at FreightWaves take your investment seriously.
Which is why we've brought together thousands of industry professionals in one city over 3 days to showcase all you have to offer.
Because your successful connections at an event like F3 move all of us forward.
Don't believe us?
Join us in June.
It's a good day coming.
So, you need to reroute a large shipment from LA to Boston. With XPO, you can make it happen with one call to right here, an XPO team with local connections that will help find a solution. We've spent over 35 years perfecting LTL freight operations to make it easy for our customers to do business with us. Why? because we're driven to be the best.
XPO, your freight first.
What does this have to do with freight? Well, I'm glad you asked. People are wondering what's going to happen with inflation. Is there going to be hyperinflation? When is hyperinflation going to be here? When is there going to be inflation? What's going to happen with inflation? Inflation. This is the sexiest topic within the economy right now.
Can RXO get truckloads of grass to Pittsburgh every month?
Who do you know in Pittsburgh?
Lots of cousins. Always complaining about the grass here.
The grass is bad in Pittsburgh.
Right? It's bitter, like a cruciferous vegetable.
Well, with RXO, you can access over 1.5 million trucks, any mode of transportation, even flatbeds. Just log in.
There's a log right there.
You know what cruciferous means, but not log in?
I'm a complicated creature.
Massive capacity, cutting edge technology. RXO.
Welcome back to FreightWaves NOW, the second carrier update of the morning. Donnie, starting here, lead times, kind of saw what we expected. They went right back to...
So outbound tender rejection rates, that's the carrier's reaction to the current market conditions. Outbound tender lead times is the shipper's reactions. What are they doing during these current market conditions? And what we learn is as tender lead times increase or pick up, it's because some type of pressure due to whether it be rates or holidays, but something is pushing on them to make them increase their tender lead times, and typically it's rates. So we look back when we started November here, tender lead times down, around that 4.225 for reefer, 2.5 to 2.6 for drive in, and then bam, you see it jump up.
Yeah.
Well, this is Thanksgiving. A few days after Thanksgiving, here we are, 2.66 for drive in and 4.30, let's call it, for reefer.
Yeah.
There's no pressure. We're in the fourth quarter. We're in the heat of it. We're in the battle. There is no pressure on shippers.
Yeah.
So you can kind of use this as a gauge as well. Until we start seeing shippers become a little bit under pressure, it's going to be harder to push those rates up for carriers. Spot rates, shall we say.
Yeah, and the problem is spot rates lead contract rates, and we've seen those come down. I think you probably have a chart that shows that we've seen it, but it hasn't come down necessarily at the rate that spot rates have.
Correct. Now, you know, and the fix to all this is what we've been talking about over the last few weeks. Reduce your exposure to the spot market. See if you can jump in, find some of these contracted freights. Now, if you were a owner-operator who bounced around and was spot rates 100%, you could be in some trouble. You're going to start calling these shippers back, and when they realize what you were doing and how much you were trying to charge them and not care about them, they're not going to care about you. And so that could be some troublesome. Of these other carriers that took care of their shippers during this boom time, they're going to be taken care of as well. Let's pop in the next chart here. And here's the WRI. Again, shippers aren't under pressure. You're not seeing a lot of changes here. We do see Denver, but Denver is more of a backhaul market typically. So we do see it picking up. I'm not very excited about seeing Denver in a blue. And we do see some Baltimore. We'll run a few rates out of Baltimore. Baltimore has both the ports here, and of course, they'll ship a lot into the Northeast as well, not just from the ports. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, you're also around there in that kind of Northeast corridor. So, I mean, it's already a little, it's one of those markets that doesn't surprise you, especially when they've ramped up activity over the past
and you'll see, a lot of this, obviously a very dense population here. You're going to see a lot more freight moving in. Next chart here, right quick, I'll ask them for this section. This is what I was trying to get to here, and this is our predicted NTI, and you see it going down, down, down. I went out 28 days, and then of course you've seen contract follow. Here, this yellow is dry van, the red is reefer. The yellow follows it a lot closer, but both of them are going down. And this is what concerns me. What if you sign contracts back in August, September?
Yeah, and then we see rates
We'll pick up here. We'll come back and pick up right here, and that's the question I want you to think about.
Yep.
What if I signed contracts back in August and September? What should I expect?
Yep, awesome stuff, Donnie. Thank you for this update. We'll be sure to check in with you again in the second hour. Right now, we'll toss it back over to Thomas and Anthony.
This time, for real, we have John Kingston here with us, and we are going to him now. And John, thanks so much for being here this morning.
Once a month on Fridays, right? Time for the employment report.
That's right.
Not a lot going on. Of course, you can always say not a lot going on just because the number change was small, but there's always, kind of hidden stories. So anyway, the number of jobs in November rose 1,300. This is in the truck transportation sector, which is a Bureau of Labor Statistics category. It rose 1,300 in November from October. But October was revised downward. So really, we're only 200 jobs up from where we thought we were a month ago. But really, what really was interesting in the report was the revision in September. When these numbers come out, they're preliminary for 2 months, and then they're final, quote unquote final, except for the one big annual revision where they revised the whole model. So when the September numbers came out in October, it was like, oh my God, my goodness, there's 11,000 plus jobs lost in a sector that had been gaining them virtually every month since the pandemic. It had that huge drop in April 2020, and then they've been rising ever since. Well, the September numbers were revised upward by like 7,500 jobs. So what it means is that the drop between September and October was actually only about 4,500 jobs and not 11,000 plus. And when you add that all together, what it means is that even after that drop, with the gains we've had in the other months, we've got about 3,000 more truck transportation jobs today than we did in August. And this is even as the trucking market is slowed down. Now, let me point out that one thing this number won't pick up is if an independent owner operator decides to go corporate and become a driver, that will look like a gain, because the loss of the independent owner operator doesn't show up in the data. If they decide just to park their trucks, if they're an independent owner operator, that doesn't show up either. So this is not just a figure of over-the-road, line haul drivers. It's all truck transportation jobs. But the bottom line is it continues to be pretty robust. And Anthony, as I'm sure you know, the overall employment report was up about the same number of jobs in November as it was in October. And the stock market has taken a tumble this morning because the assumption is that if the Fed was going to dial back the increases when they see a number like this, they're probably not going to.
And looking at, especially with those revisions, that kind of has me curious, is this typical to have such large revisions in the thousands between not only that 2 month period and the 1 month period? Is that something where someone's just not checking a box correctly? Or are we going through spreadsheets? Or is there a rational explanation to why Uncle Sam seems to struggle with counting?
Well, remember, they're not really counting jobs. They're modeling jobs based on a data set that they get. Anthony could probably speak to it better in terms of, their data supplies are many. But one thing they do not do is say 1 job, 2 job, 3 job, 4 job. Okay. That is a pretty big revision. It's not that rare, but it is a large revision. Do want to point out the other big number in the report that was significant were in the warehouse jobs, which dropped like another 12,000 plus. And they're down like, I was just doing the numbers when you came on, but they're down like, close to 70,000 jobs since June. And we've all heard about the warehouse slowdown. There's a slowdown in freight in general. There's warehouse space that holders of it, including Amazon, are trying to sublet. So we know that warehousing has been slow, and the jobs are really showing it down, like I said, about probably close to 70,000 jobs just since June.
And John, I think you bring up a great point, especially around stocks this morning. And I unfortunately did look at my Robinhood and E-Trade account. Not too happy right now. But when we're looking at that expectation that, hey, this is more likely more fuel for the Fed to increase interest rates, this makes the next year look a little bit interesting, especially as we see that really relatively a strong U.S. dollar compared to other currencies. Does this kind of really push that inflationary pressures into the next year potentially and really kind of put us in a little bit more of a dire position as we kind of start to see, all right, if we're in recession, what tools does the Fed have to really combat this inflation that's not really inflationary building? We think about interest rates, of course, but lowering them would be almost inflationary building, and any kind of other policy would almost be inflationary building as well.
Well, I mean, I don't know where the argument is that we're in recession. We've got solid job growth. I think the quarterly, but I guess the third quarter revised growth rate was 2% plus. So where's really the signs of a recession outside of, there's some very highly publicized layoffs. We know about that through the tech sector. But then, then you get an employment report like this, and it shows you that, good people are being let go, but good people are finding jobs too. So I'm not really sure where the case is for recession right now. I know everybody's kind of building one next year into their models, but right now it's certainly not showing up in the data.
It reminds me of a Convoy report that when a freight recession happens, you have the equivalent of a coin toss over the past 30 years as to whether or not the overall economy decides to tumble. I feel like we're waiting for the coin to land. What are some other concerns? I know you've gone into the employment numbers. You also report on fuel, and other, energy. Are there any other things that you've been looking at that are, coming up on the radar?
You mean like other economic data? I'm trying to think here if anything really catches me. Boy, you caught me unprepared on that one. The oil situation was going to be affected. OPEC was talking this weekend about having a meeting and deciding to cut some more because they were concerned about how much oil has dropped. Crude, as measured, not diesel, but crude, now is sitting about where it sat at the start of the year. Really, all the gains for the year have been all but wiped out. And that had concerned them, so they were going to meet in person and maybe do a cut. Now they have shifted to deciding to meet virtually, and they're not going to do a cut virtually. They would want to meet in person to do that. So that shows you that at least that level of supply right now is going to hold. So that's a positive for the economy. There's no doubt that right now oil is providing maybe a little bit of a stimulus. You know that consumer confidence is so much tied to that gasoline price. It's probably somewhat irrational to be that tied to that number, but that number is very, very visible. When you see gasoline prices coming down like this, you have to assume that might have a little bit of an optimistic impact on consumer confidence, which is certainly a factor. And, we're hearing all these reports of right now, strong Black Friday numbers, strong Cyber Monday numbers. So, again, the signs of recession, I know that they're certainly there in the freight market, but the signs of a broader recession are not really there right now.
And John, as you look at what to expect going into the next year, of course, it's so hard to even nail down any kind of expectations for the upcoming week within the oil market. There's a lot of talk around the industry that there's just going to be a huge surge in prices. Are you seeing any variables or any factors that really kind of feed into that expectation from some people?
Well, the big surge, I don't know if I've seen evidence of a surge, but the big unknown factor is China. China's consumption has dropped considerably because of their lockdowns. Signs right now that the COVID zero policy may be something they're backing away from. The market doesn't have a lot of slack in it. And if you suddenly get a big increase in Chinese demand, that I think is the one thing that's out there that has the most potential to drive prices higher. You saw oil demand come back in the West pretty quickly as people freed themselves from their lockdowns, from the Western lockdowns. How much of that is going to happen in China? So that's certainly the wild card. And I think the case for higher prices in 2023 certainly comes down to Chinese demand.
And looking at final thoughts here as well, circling back from the employment, you mentioned employment data here, trucking and warehousing. Final thoughts within even the overall supply chain. Was there any other numbers or data that stood out to you in terms of things we should keep an eye on moving into even more like December's employment numbers?
Well, I'm probably making too much of this, but the rail number has been fascinating me for months because it never moves. And this is one of the reasons why we almost had a strike, because if you look at the numbers from even pre-pandemic, when precision railroading was starting to be introduced throughout the industry, the employment numbers collapsed from like 180,000 plus down to right now they're kind of sitting regularly at 146 to 147, 146,000 to 147,000. And they were up this month to 147,008, which is the largest in a year. So, I was at the Rail Trends conference a couple of years ago, and the railroads say, we're trying to hire because we know we need it. The head of the STB actually lambasted the railroad executives in the audience for the job cuts, leading to such lousy service. So, you can see where, okay, again, I'm probably making too much. We're talking about like 100 to 200 job growth, okay? But still, it's an upward trend, highest in a year. Maybe the railroads are trying to hire, just having tough time finding people. Maybe now with the resolution of the labor situation, that'll change.
And John, if people watching right now want to drill a little bit deeper, how can they do that?
Well, they can watch Drilling Deep, of course, which if you go to FreightWaves Now, it drops on every Friday at 2:30, and of course, it's on demand at all times. It's also just the audio portion on the podcast platforms. We did switch to a video format earlier this year, and Robin Gregg, the CEO of RoadSync, is our guest this week. Had a great interview with her the other day. If you're interested in payments, I definitely think you should watch it.
Perfect. Thanks so much, John, for coming on as well. Looking forward to having you on again and watching Drilling Deep. Always a wonderful time.
Thanks, guys.
Right now, we're going to take a short break, but we'll be right back with more FreightWaves Now.
doing up there, Bert?
The RXO folks want us to demo their technology.
That's smart.
Yeah, not really. My beak doesn't work so well on this tablet.
Well, they're paying us now, so...
I know, here goes. Our customers' freight is seamlessly moved anywhere in North America using RXO's digital platform to access over 1.5 million trucks.
That sounded good.
I think I broke my beak.
Massive capacity, cutting-edge technology. RXO.
This is an LTL freight cross-dock facility, and we have locations like this all across North America. East Coast, West Coast, even our neighbors to the north and south. At XPO, our network helps us deliver 18 billion pounds of freight every year to 99% of US zip codes and beyond. And now, it's getting even bigger because we're adding 900 new doors to our terminals. XPO, your freight first.
Welcome back to FreightWaves Now, everyone. I'm Isaiah Buchanan, and this is Social Roundabout, where we take a look at what's trending on social media. Well, we all talk about trucks here at FreightWaves, right? Well, the most well-known truck out of them all is probably Optimus Prime. He's the leader of the Autobots, and he and the Autobots are actually back in another installment of Transformers. Here's a look at the new movie that's going to be coming out next June, Transformers Rise of the Beast. So this movie is going to be based on the animated series that came out in the 1990s called Beast Wars. So you're going to see a lot of new Transformers that are based on Rhinox and a couple of other new characters that we haven't seen before. So Peter Cullen will be returning as Optimus Prime, the voice of Optimus Prime. Ron Perlman is going to be returning, he's going to be in this movie as Optimus Primal, and then Peter Dinklage from Game of Thrones is going to be the voice of the main villain called Scourge. So this movie, you know, they've made so many different installments, but this one's gonna be, it looks like they're trying to turn things around with this one. It took them several years to make. So it's going to be coming out next June, so be looking out for that in theaters. Switching things up a little bit, Kanye has made another anti-Semitic comments. He was on the podcast InfoWars with Alex Jones when he said, quote, "I see good things about Hitler," end quote. So people took to Twitter all ranting about Kanye, and this one user said, "Elon, fix Kanye, please." And Elon responds, "I tried my best. Despite that, he again violated our rule against incitement to violence. Account will be suspended." And so about an hour after Elon tweeted that out, Kanye's account was again suspended for his comments. Kanye's been in trouble for making a lot of anti-Semitic comments here in the past weeks and months. And so we're not really sure what's going to happen with that. We'll be continuing to monitor his situation, and we will keep you up to date with that. That's all I have for this edition of Social Roundabout. But right now, we're going to take a quick look at the market update in the last 24 hours in freight.
Thomas, we had a fun time at F3. It was an amazing in-person event, but our next one isn't until next year, but we still have something left in the tank.
Definitely. Do not fret, folks. We have the Domestic Supply Chain Summit coming up on December 14th. Put it on your calendars. It's free. We'll also have a great list of speakers, including our keynote, Dr. David Carell with MIT's Freight Lab. And also, we'll have little breakout rooms so you can talk to, colleagues. And there's a giveaway. What are we looking at here?
That's right. We have a Sonos speaker system here, and this is going to be something that I am once again jealous that we're not eligible to win because I love me some good sound.
Exactly. Register now. You can get the Sonos portable smart speaker set. Very exciting stuff, but folks, we encourage you all to definitely check out the event. There's a lot of topics going on in the domestic supply chain. It is definitely the most wonderful time of the year if you're a shopper, and probably one of the most stressful times if you're a shipper. So definitely check that out when you can.
Definitely a lot for everyone there, but stick with us. We'll be right back after this quick break with more FreightWaves Now.
When guests come to an event like F3, we know what they want is a chance to show off their products, their swag, and make new partnerships that will last until our next FreightWaves event.
But the problem is there are so many industry events, it can be so hard to find the right one to invest your time and energy in. We at FreightWaves take your investment seriously.
Which is why we brought together thousands of industry professionals in one city over 3 days to showcase all you have to offer.
Because your successful connections at an event like F3 move all of us forward.
Don't believe us?
Join us in June.
coming.
When you have thousands of trucks delivering billions of pounds of freight, you need the right equipment, the right technology, and the right team. At XPO, we provide tuition-free training at 130 XPO driver schools across the country, and the tools drivers need to be at the top of their game, providing rewarding careers for our team members and top-notch service for our customers, while continuing to deliver LTL freight on time and damage-free. XPO, your freight first.
Can RXO get truckloads of grass to Pittsburgh every month?
Who do you know in Pittsburgh?
Lots of cousins. Always complaining about the grass here.
The grass is bad in Pittsburgh.
Right? It's bitter, like a cruciferous vegetable.
Well, with RXO, you can access over 1.5 million trucks, any mode of transportation, even flatbeds. Just log in.
There's the log right there.
You know what cruciferous means, but not log in?
I'm a complicated creature.
Massive capacity, cutting edge technology. RXO.
Welcome back into FreightWaves Now in the second hour, starting with the carrier update. Donnie, going to start here looking at diesel fuel prices. Seen another 2-cent decline day over day. So they are starting to accelerate. It's just 2 cents, though. That's the scary one.
That's the scary part. So we've had the ultra low, so the rack prices jump back up a few cents here. And now, taken for granted, we'll look here in a second at the split. There's plenty of split to absorb this. But if this continues, this could really mess up this new dropping in diesel fuel prices and push them back up. Again, I keep looking at social media, keep watching these guys post prices. I'm seeing a lot of $3.99s. These are down in Texas, near Houston, etc., which is the cheapest areas for diesel fuel, but hopefully that will push its way on up through the country and these prices will come on down. But if we go to the next chart here and look at the split between diesel fuel and the rack price here, it's come down just a little bit to $1.77. Still extremely elevated, which gives a lot of room, probably a good 60, 65 cents room for dropping in the retail price. Which could bring us down to a average retail price in the 470s, which means around here, even where I'm at, could be at or below $4.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking, it was $1.92 2 days ago. I mean, highest it's ever been yesterday, obviously at $1.87. So, I mean, it's come down a little, but it's a lot higher. I mean, when we talk, we're talking what, this $1 to $1.10 range typically? I mean, you look back where it was in early November, end of October. I mean, that's where they're comfortable. There's room for them to run because the comfort level should be there, but the volatility is the reason they're keeping prices higher.
What's going to happen here in January and February? Of course, there's a lot of factors of what's going on, and a lot of other factors could influence this. But if demand for trucks drops down, drivers are driving fewer miles, they're burning less diesel, demand for diesel may go down. It's just could this drop a lot further? After all the holidays are going, we get into that first quarter season because there's nothing really strong about Q1 except for March. We see it start to pick back up. Produce season starting a little bit in March, coming in from Mexico, whatnot, coming in from South America. But we may see a lot more acceleration in those times, considering what goes on with Russia, Venezuela, etc.
Yeah, for sure. And it's one of those, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out in the next, 3-4 months.
Yeah, and it could be a knight in shining armor as revenues continue to drop in these trucking companies, expenses continue to rise. They may see a pretty good relief here in diesel fuel as we get into those months, which, like I say, is their number 2 expense. Hopefully that can drop down to where it's a little bit more reasonable. But if this drops down and you're contracted, this could hurt you because that spread is not there to help offset maybe some other expenses where you could actually profit on your fuel surcharge versus now either breaking even or even losing a little bit of money like it was in the old days.
Yep, absolutely. Well, Donnie, thank you so much for this update. We'll be sure to check in with you one more time before the end of the show. Right now, we'll toss it over to Thomas and Anthony.
Thomas, one of my favorite segments is when we get to chat with the good people over at Metafora.
Oh yeah, definitely. The folks at Metafora, always a fun time. And joining us is actually Pawal Wencel, Director of Customer Support with Metafora. Welcome, sir. I'm really excited to have you on.
Thank you guys. Excited to be here. Pleasure meeting you both.
And we've got a few points here, and my favorite, starting off, the quote to live by: people never forget how you make them feel. I feel that way many times, especially trying to deal with versions of customer support that are not transportation related. What are some of your thoughts, especially on how, what does this mean to you all from a Metafora standpoint?
Absolutely, and great question and great quote. It's something that we at Metafora definitely live by. It's not necessarily specific to customer support. I think it starts with the company culture, and I think we've had Peter on numerous times in the show before. And that idea of caring for each other and making each other feel great day in, day out permeates within the culture of Metafora. So it's kind of easy to then translate that to not only our clients but also the clients' users as well. And when we make people feel good about themselves, make them feel well about themselves, they tend to speak well of us as well. So
that's right. And I mean, that's one of the big things. And I mean, when you look at that and really live by that, are you also getting feedback from customers as well?
Yes. Another great question. So when we kind of came in and really looked at customer support and what it means to Metafora about a year and a half ago, and just kind of shifting the paradigm and the mindset of customer support no longer necessarily being an afterthought or kind of like an add-on or a throw-in, but more of a value proposition, and started really looking at what good customer support looks like and what great customer support looks like, and then how can we go above and beyond that as well, and started benchmarking cross industry as well as industry specific, setting different internal standards and then sharing that with our clients, and then capturing the voice of the customer and what they told us initially, and then kind of comparing and contrasting that over time in the last 18 months or so. And the change has been drastic, to say it lightly. Last couple of days ago was the end of November. Today's December 2nd. And we actually hit a fantastic milestone, one of our major platforms for one of our clients. We hit 95% customer satisfaction score, which is, it's kind of unheard of in logistics and transportation, but it just across industry, no matter what, it might be retail, consumer products, it's just a really huge milestone for us in terms of what we've been able to achieve and shifting that paradigm and really focusing on the end user with the client in mind and delivering the value through the chain, right? Working with our clients to provide our end users the utmost experience and support on the front end.
Well, it's also some fun facts here, real quick. 96% of customers, when surveyed, said customer service is extremely important. 84% of those companies that work to improve customer service increase their revenue. And then finally, 81% of companies view the experience as a competitive advantage. I'm a little surprised by the facts. I didn't expect it to be that high on just how important, how they feel about you is.
Exactly, and that's what we started to look at in terms of our benchmarking and looking across industry. This came out from I believe a Forbes article in the last couple of months, and really putting the emphasis again of customer support as a value proposition, not necessarily a cost center that you have to have it just to have it and say that you have customer support, but understanding that we can really develop and foster relationships on a much deeper level with our clients and their users by really focusing on the end user experience and tailoring the customer experience and the customer support to their needs whenever they're coming across issues, but also kind of going beyond their experiences on the platform. So also providing them ways to make their workflows a little bit more efficient, and not just dealing with the superficial problem they might be dealing at the instance where we're communicating with them, but also providing them an overall holistic solution that might not be even aware of when we talk to them. And those stats are again go back from the benchmarking we did, and we're big on stats, and we like to kind of work towards those and surpass them, and kind of celebrate them when we do.
These are all things that make all the sense in the world, I think, about even from my own personal experiences with dealing with different brands and how much that customer service really means to me. And it really helps with, retaining me as a customer and a client. When you're looking at really being able to do this, what are some of the ways you go about this? I mean, I'm sure you're looking at going the extra mile, but what are going to be some of the ways that you implement all these things?
Absolutely, and you kind of hit the nail on the head a little bit to start off with. We also have a podcast, but the same name, shameless plug, going the extra mile. A couple of great hosts on there. Next season coming out shortly with Adam Perlmutter and Teresa Tranquillo. But going the extra mile and not focusing on the interaction in the moment, but developing long-term relationships with the users, because shippers most likely are going to come back to us at when they have to ship again, right? And they're going to ship multiple times, and we want them to. So knowing that this is not their only experience on the platform with us or with our clients, and making sure that we develop those trusted relationship. And like I mentioned before, just not necessarily just delivering the solution just there in time, but hey, how can we make your workflows better, more efficient over time as well, and really empathizing, understanding that the moment in time and the issue that you're having at the particular time is this very small microcosm of your day, right? You having to book that shipment on the platform that we've delivered or created and developed is one of millions of other things you have to do, right? So this should be, and we understand that, and we want you to know that we understand that, and we want to meet you there and go above and beyond your expectations of us in terms of helping you through that problem, and knowing that you have other things that you want to get to, right? Really being understanding of our user base. And to mention him, Adam Perlmutter, we had this great conversation recently. I'm a very positive person. We're a very positive team, but there are challenging and courageous conversations and interactions that we have with our users and our clients, right? But learning from those, growing from those together collaboratively has been paramount in our success, not only as a team, but in developing those relationships as well.
And final thoughts here. I like radical empathy and active listening. It almost feels like it's a skill you have to train, because a lot of users will voice their concerns. It's just a lot of companies don't know really how to understand and express and reflect it back. Is that something that you all have to take a little bit of extra work for folks that you're bringing in and kind of saying, hey, this is a new way of looking at this when we deal with customers?
Absolutely, great point. Another one. On onboarding, we turned our customer team over 18 months ago, and and we're always learning. We're always looking to improve. We're always looking to how can we be better listeners, right? Rephrasing the question, right? Apologizing, taking ownership, even though it might not necessarily be our fault. But it is our responsibility to get you to that solution. Absolutely. Onboarding and developing are critical items, obviously, to our internal team, but also to the users as well, right? So when they're new to the platform, making sure they're understanding how it works and taking them through the customer journey. One thing is we don't necessarily look at customer support as a silo in itself. We think of it as just a piece of a bigger picture, right? There's the customer onboarding that leads to customer experience as part of customer success, and customer support, customer service just kind of brings the customer end user client along the journey, so to speak.
Thanks so much for joining us this morning. If people want to get in touch with you or reach out, how can they do that?
Absolutely. Thank you again. Thank you guys again for having me. For everybody, happy holidays, happy New Year. Like you guys mentioned, the holidays can be a very stressful part of the year, and hopefully your customer support experience is not one of those, and we will try to do our best to make sure it's not. But best place to find us is just go to metafora.net, and that's where you can probably find me, but along with the rest of the team as well. And you can always look us up on LinkedIn as well. But very appreciative of you guys. Thank you very much for having me on.
Thank you so much for coming on as well. We'll definitely have to touch back in again. It's such a radical concept listening. I know when I had angry drivers call me that sometimes you just want to be heard, and it's a rare skill these days.
Yeah, 100%. And like I said, it does a lot to help retain me as a client whenever I'm working with someone. But right now, we're going to toss it over to Sydney Edwards, who has our next hit of today's headlines.
With a full check of our top stories for the day, I'm Sydney Edwards. Now, the Senate voted 80-15 yesterday to intervene on a potential rail strike. This is the first time since 1991 that Congress has intervened on a rail labor dispute. Now, the bill does not include paid sick leave, which was the key demand by rail unions. The Senate rejected a measure proposed by Senator Bernie Sanders to include 7 days of paid sick leave for rail workers by a vote of 52-43. 60 votes were required to pass. The House of Representatives approved a separate bill to guarantee those 7 days of paid sick leave on Wednesday, though it appears that Biden will approve legislation that does not include this sick leave. And yesterday, Elon Musk unveiled the Tesla Semi, an all-electric Class 8 truck that the automaker hopes will shake up the commercial transportation industry. Musk introduced the Semi during a live event at the company's Nevada Gigafactory. He said the Semi is fast to accelerate, fast to brake, a step-change improvement in what it's currently like to drive a semi-truck. Musk said it has 3 times the power of any diesel truck on the road right now, and he said that the Semi isn't as easy to drive as a Model 3 and could be driven with no training. And according to the Last Mile Sustainability Perspective released yesterday, despite the obvious fit for last mile operations, few organizations are adopting electric vehicles, although interest remains high. Short routes that allow for vehicles to be home nightly have been identified as an ideal fit for EVs, but the new report from Dispatch Truck found that while 85% of supply chain organizations would consider adding EVs to save on fuel costs, only 14% are currently deploying them or plan to do so in the future. Dispatch Truck is a last-mile delivery technology company. On the question of EVs, more than 1/4 said they were cost-restrictive, while 26% cited infrastructure concerns. Almost half said they don't know enough about EVs. And Senate lawmakers introduced legislation yesterday that would set aside $755 million in competitive grants over 4 years to expand much-needed truck parking across the country. The bipartisan Truck Parking Safety Improvement Act, co-sponsored by Senators Cynthia Lummis and Mark Kelly, will serve as companion legislation to a House version introduced last year and approved by the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee in July. Like the House bill, which currently has 25 Republican and 14 Democratic co-sponsors, the Senate bill allows for public-private projects that create new parking areas or expand parking existing facilities, and projects that allow for commercial parking at existing way stations, rest areas, and park and ride facilities. Unlike the House bill, however, the Senate bill would also allow for truck parking expansion at commercial truck stops and travel plazas. And Air Canada is in the horse transportation business again. It's a move made possible by the introduction nearly a year ago of wide-body freighters to the passenger fleet. Air Canada Cargo announced last month the start of an equine transportation service using specially designed stalls that can carry up to 3 animals. The new service builds on a legacy of experience gained during an earlier era when the airline operated all cargo aircraft and from processing horses for other airlines at a holding area at its Toronto hub. Air Canada retained its live animal handling facility for horses at Toronto Pearson International Airport, providing hotel services for other airlines despite the shift to an all-passenger fleet. The barn is a stopping off point where horses can rest, eat, drink, and be checked by veterans before being loaded on aircraft or into outbound horse trailers. It is located away from the noisy warehouse area to minimize stress for the animals. Now you can find these details and even more happening at FreightWaves.com and on our FreightWaves app. If you're watching us on our YouTube channel, give us a like and subscribe to stay updated. You can get the full FreightWaves TV experience by heading on over to tv.freightwaves.com. We're going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back with more FreightWaves Now.
The 2023 Freight Tech 25 list is filled with meaningful innovators from across the industry who are helping shape what the future of supply chain will look like. Check out the full list of these companies and all the latest freight tech news at FreightWaves.com.
So, you need to reroute a large shipment from LA to Boston. With XPO, you can make it happen with one call to right here. An XPO team with local connections that will help find a solution. We've spent over 35 years perfecting LTL freight operations to make it easy for our customers to do business with us. Why? Because we're driven to be the best.
XPO, your freight first.
What are you doing up there, Bert?
The RXO folks want us to demo their technology.
That's smart.
Yeah, not really. My beak doesn't work so well on this tablet.
Well, they're paying us now, so.
I know, here goes. Our customers' freight is seamlessly moved anywhere in North America using RXO's digital platform to access over 1.5 million trucks.
That sounded good.
I think I broke my beak.
Massive capacity, cutting edge technology. RXO.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to The Economy Lately. I'm Anthony Smith, Chief Economist here at FreightWaves, and it's been far too long. And of course, I'm joined by the one, the only South Turk.
Woo! We're back!
We're back, and the glue that holds the show together, the one that brings the edits, the production, the direction. I'm glad to have you here with me.
Yeah, I'm glad to be back. Glad you're back. Glad we're both back. Glad The Economy Lately's back.
Yeah, I mean, what? This is season 3?
Season what? Yeah, let's call it the return.
The return of Economy Lately. I feel that.
Yeah,
I feel that. I'm about that. And this is a little bit different here.
Yeah, it is a little bit different. What?
We got lights or something. I don't know what's going on.
I don't. Did you iron your pullover or something? Is that different?
I haven't washed this thing in 3 years.
Oh, well, that explains some things.
Yeah.
But it's not that, I guess.
I did hit a new bicep routine, so.
Oh, that you know what? That's it. That's what's different right now.
That could be it. That could be it. That could be making things look a little bit beefier.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, we got in trouble.
Yeah, we did get in trouble. We got disciplined a little bit.
Yeah. So can we not say stuff like?
Yeah, we can't say that or things like.
Can we at least touch on, geopolitical, really how we're seeing more trends going towards Kanye West's new workout?
Probably not. And that brings me to the next point. I think they specifically mentioned that we not talk about how in 2008, Elon Musk. The mating habits of Sasquatches.
So what are we supposed to talk about?
Beats me. Wait, what's the name of the show?
Economy Lately?
Oh, The Economy.
Sal, that's some bull. It's been some time, and we got to jump right into what's been happening. And I'm going to start with a little bit of what's been going on upstream. So since we last left upstream and talking about manufacturing, there has been some activity going on, but it's definitely been moderating. So when we're looking at manufacturing, what we've really been seeing happening is that there is still some runway, kind of. The ISM PMI manufacturing index has been easing and just on the verge of hitting that contraction definition right there. And the new orders component is actually hitting contraction as of this year. We're seeing that new orders component now below 50. The newest new orders number will be coming out before the time of this recording, but best believe we'll be talking about it in the next episode of Economy Lately as well. But we're looking at manufacturing overall. We're still seeing that there is still ongoing activity. Now, that's not to say that inflation is not playing a role here. So we're looking at business to business activity. So more specifically, non-defense capital goods new orders, excluding aircraft, what we're seeing right there is that there was a slight bump up in the latest report number showing that there was an increase of 0.7%. Now, it should be mentioned that that report is not adjusted for inflation, and it is measured in billions of dollars. So inflation is still a thing here for sure. And that also means that interest rates are going to play a role here because, Jerry Powell is going ham on that inflation fight and is really boosting up those interest rates. And as an effect of that, is it effect or effect?
I don't know. You said ham and now I'm hungry. I don't really.
Do they have like Beyond Meat ham?
I mean, they have Beyond everything.
Okay.
It's Batman Beyond that I care about.
They don't know about that, Sal. They're talking about SpongeBob and all this other stuff. It's Batman Beyond was a cool Batman.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. They got to bring that back if that's not already back. I don't know. But I do know that inflation is still here, and it's definitely been a thing for quite some time. And because of that, interest rates have definitely made their appearance. And what we've seen from that is that a lot of folks are making that really run up on being able to pull forward some inventory or some orders ahead of further increases, just to be sure that they can lock in certain prices, just in case that those interest rates start to diminish their buying power if they're leveraging credit. So this can be one of those things that we're seeing on the upstream side for manufacturing. But that's enough of upstream. We got to talk about what's happening with you, me, and everyone, the U.S. consumer. So we're going to move a little bit downstream, and we're going to start with consumer conditions. Once we kind of look at what's going on in the supply chain and for consumers and really the overall media cycle, we've heard it all over the last week or so, and that's around how consumers showed up in full strength throughout this Black Friday, Cyber Monday, season here. We're seeing so much strength from the consumer, so much activity, and this is a sign of the resilience that we're seeing in the U.S. economy. And I don't really see it as a positive. I see it as more of a concern. So it's kind of like you have that friend that's always bad with money, and as soon as they get paid, they just kind of ball out, and then it's like crickets for the rest of the week until payday hits again. And it's concerning because you know that there is really a end in sight here, and it's not really too good for them in the long run. And that's what I'm seeing right now in the U.S. economy and the consumer. We're looking at the savings rate that's now at the lowest point since we've seen since really 2008, which I don't have to tell you what happened in 08, 09 timeframe. They're not in the best of positions. We're also seeing that, a lot of folks are going to say, hey, Anthony, let the consumers do what they want to do. They got the jobs to do it. And I would say not so fast. I mean, you see the latest job openings report showing that there's 10.3 million openings, and that's great for some, but really in general, hiring has been slowing down throughout the entire year for the most part in 2022. This also leads into some of the other aspects of the employment numbers. So when we're looking at job creations, that's also slowed down to some of the slowest levels that we've seen since 2021. This is all kind of showing that there is definitely a shift happening within the jobs market, and a lot of those consumers that are overextending themselves potentially are going to be caught exposed and in a really bad position if there is any kind of shakeups in their jobs, and that is very likely and increasingly growing.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you talking about growing and exposing. This is what we're told not to do, Anthony.
Yeah,
this is direct orders.
But anyway, the consumer is on shaky ground, and they're extending themselves with credit card utilization, buy now, pay later, which is very concerning because we're not very much tracking that closely. It's kind of like this big black mystery box of no one knows how much is in there. And a lot of folks can be left out to dry if they are really laid off, overextending themselves, and really trying to push it as far as they can because there's that confidence in the job market. And I think that job market confidence is really starting to wane because we are definitely seeing that the quit rate is starting to ease in a sense. And so that's going to do it for this episode of Economy Lately. There is still so much more to jump into, and I'm excited to be back with you all and reunited with South.
Yeah, and I think we're off to a good start because, we got a lot of good information, good banter, no controversial subjects or anything.
No,
nothing at all. Everyone should be happy. But, I'm especially happy that this is the end of the episode and certain things weren't mentioned. And
like what? Like Photoshop? Oh, we got more Faux Try coming. Don't you guys worry. There's plenty more Faux Try. Season 3 is going to be awesome. South, I can't wait to hit the streets again. Miss me and you to the end, South.
Uh-huh.
We'll see you all in the next episode.
When guests come to an event like F3, we know what they want is a chance to show off their products, their swag, and make new partnerships that will last until our next FreightWaves event.
But the problem is there are so many industry events, it can be so hard to find the right one to invest your time and energy in. We at FreightWaves take your investment seriously.
Which is why we've brought together thousands of industry professionals in one city over 3 days to showcase all you have to offer.
Because your successful connections at an event like F3 move all of us forward.
Don't believe us?
Join us in June.
It's a good day coming.
This is an LTL freight cross-dock facility, and we have locations like this all across North America. East Coast, West Coast, even our neighbors to the north and south. At XPO, our network helps us deliver 18 billion pounds of freight every year to 99% of US zip codes and beyond. And now, it's getting even bigger because we're adding 900 new doors to our terminals. XPO, your freight first.
Can Ark sell good truckloads of grass to Pittsburgh every month?
Who do you know in Pittsburgh?
Lots of cousins. Always complaining about the grass here.
The grass is bad in Pittsburgh.
Right? It's bitter, like a cruciferous vegetable.
Well, with RXO, you can access over 1.5 million trucks, any mode of transportation, even flatbeds. Just log in.
There's the log right there.
You know what cruciferous means, but not log in?
I'm a complicated creature.
Massive capacity, cutting edge technology. RXO.
Welcome into the final carrier update of the week. Donnie, gonna get into our lanes of the day. This is a market that was standing out on that weighted rejection index. Baltimore, gonna start there, looking at going up in the Northeast.
Yeah, and so, and these are still some pretty good rates. Get out of your box, do something different, try it. Find guys that do it and talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
Baltimore to Boston, it's not a difficult lane, but it's one of the few that's paying $4.14 a mile still, and it's 400 miles. So that's still a pretty good rate for 400 miles.
Yeah.
You get up in there, run a few of these, see how it is. You may have a bad experience, run it a few times and figure, are they all bad experiences or can you adjust these? Talk to the drivers that run it. Maybe don't be leaving Baltimore at 7 a.m. to where you're going to hit a lot. Maybe you find out you need to pick up the loads that pick up at 11 a.m. and you'll do better. I don't know. But, these are the lanes that you're going to have to find to stay profitable. It's not going to be the easy Dallas to Atlanta, LAX to Dallas lanes. No.
It's not, I was gonna say, it's not the lanes that have made a killing, you've made a killing on over the past 2 years, right? Those have come down. It's the ones that are more niche. I mean, if you want to think about this, it kind of is a niche lane, even though it's a dry van lane.
Don't want to go.
Yep.
They're going to have to pay more. And let's look at the return lane. Hit the little double arrows here. Coming back, of course, we're on drive in. And you're returning the back haul, 410 miles, 301 average price.
Yeah.
So even the back haul is still at $3, which is unbelievable to me because I was extremely happy with the $1.15 all in on this lane.
That's what I was about to say. In the past, you've said it. You were happy to get $1.15 just to get out of Boston. Now you're getting $3 a mile.
That was out of Boston to here, what I call the belt here. And this is, Baltimore through PA, because once it's very difficult. A lot of freight comes in through this area, and it all delivers into the Northeast. The reason it delivers into the Northeast because the Northeast absorbs more freight than it actually produces. So to get out of this area, out to the Midwest, a lot of people want that freight as well. So you can be looking at less than $1 a mile to get maybe from PA to Chicago, where the heart of it is, or PA to Indianapolis. And of course, these rates are a lot better now too as well. But this is just back down to Boston. It's still $3 a mile. All right, next lane here.
Ooh,
one of my favorites. And this one's is still a good rate as well. It's not quite as long, but it's $2.78 a mile. So we're looking at Milwaukee to Indianapolis. I've got my NTID turned on, 267. We're a little bit over $1 per mile going from Milwaukee down to Indianapolis. Again, you got to go through Chicago. There's some areas that you're going to hit some heavy congestion in, but you need to make this turn, almost one turn a day to remain profitable. Hit the little double arrows here and see what it is going back. Indianapolis returning to Milwaukee. And again, we're still at 327.
And it's gaining some positive traction.
Yeah, and this has been picking up here over the last couple of weeks here.
So that's what you want to see. It's not that it's 327, but it's down from 350 last week. It's that it's 327, and it was up from 310 last week.
This is one of the few that's going in that direction. So yes, Tony. All right, we'll give you one more, and I'll let you go. Athens, Georgia to Atlanta this weekend. It's picking up a little bit as well. It's gaining some traction here. I like this lane.
I'm sure you do. Thank you, Donnie, for the updates this week. We'll be sure to check in with you again next week. Right now, we'll toss it over to Bill Priestley.
And welcome into the roundtable. Bill Priestley here with you. And Monday is a big day because in some ways we're going to see something unprecedented happen in Europe as we see a price cap being enforced probably on Russian oil. And how is this all going to work out? We've got two people that can talk with some expertise to that. First off, to my left, Thomas Wasson, joining us here in studio, and live from Buies Creek, North Carolina, Dr. Sal Mercogliano, Associate Professor of History at Campbell University. Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us. I feel like we had a little bit of hijinks, actually, before we came on here, and I feel like this, Sal, you didn't see it necessarily, but just a little bit of levity in this particular situation, and I think that's kind of how we have to approach it. But let me just put it out there. What's going to happen on Monday, do you think?
I think that's the big question right now because we're not exactly sure. The price cap has got to be ironed out. We still don't have a firm price cap because Poland still feels that even at $60 a barrel, that's not impacting Russia because Russian oil is selling for under that right now. So Poland's of this idea that a price cap only works if you lower it. Understand what the G7 and the EU want is two things that are contradictory to each other. Number one, they want to hurt Russia, but at the same time, they want to keep 100 million barrels of oil flowing a day. And, they want to do that by lowering the cost. The problem is Russia is bottom feeding everybody else. And not only are they bottom feeding everybody else, but they're driving down world crude prices, which is great, especially in this period of high inflation, but it has the potential to cause economic chaos around the world if all of a sudden we start seeing production start leveling off.
Yeah, Thomas, it looks like the EU and the G7 are kind of in more trouble right now than Russia is at this point.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, it's a situation where this is a very purposeful decision by policymakers over the past, 20, 30 years to put Russia as a very large supplier of their energy security. So, I mean, it's kind of humorous that if you decide to put your energy fate in the hands of a petrostate, and then the petrostate decides to go to war, which you don't like, you're really limited in your options to punish said petrostate. So, yeah, it's fascinating because, there's two conflicting goals. And right now, I don't think Europe can make either of them happy in a favorable outcome.
Yeah. So, Sal, how is this among the other sanctions that have been put on Russia? Is this right now something that's still going to hurt them, especially as they were imposed on this war effort that, of course, Russia did when they invaded Ukraine?
Oh, it's going to hurt them because remember, there's actually two things going on here. So number one, on Monday, you stopped shipping Russian oil to the G7, to the European Union, plus Australia. So that's going to happen no matter what. That will stop. You will not see any more Russian oil going in there because we have seen that up to this point. What this impacts, what the price cap impacts, is the exportation of Russian oil to nations like India, to China, to Africa, to the Middle East, to other regions that are not in the sanction element. And remember, the key part about this oil is being refined, and then it's clean oil. It can come out and fill the world marketplace. And if you all of a sudden cut this oil out, it's going to cause a massive disruption. The problem I think that the G7 and the EU has is they picked one mechanism to enforce this, and that is insurance. They're going to the 13 big P&I protection and indemnity clubs and sitting there saying, listen, you don't insure these ships, or the cargo specifically, not the ships, it's really just the cargo. Don't insure the cargo if it's over this set price cap, which we still don't know what it's going to be yet. And the problem is that's a very difficult enforcement operation, because if they wanted to be fully enforcing, they should have gone to the flag states. They should have gone to the Vessel Classification Society. They could have pulled the registries. They didn't do that. And so this is going to be extremely difficult to enforce because there are other alternatives to the 13 big P&I clubs. And what we saw happen recently is a new classification society pop up in Dubai. There's nothing to stop a new insurance agency to pop up in Hong Kong, China, or for the Russians to self-insure the vessels.
Yeah, Thomas, Sal just kind of alluded to my next question was, if you're Putin, what are your options now?
I mean, if you're Putin and the Russia, you're obviously going to continue doing your goals with your military operation in Ukraine. But at the same time, it's really hard to, because of 2014 and other sanctions on Russia, we've already been sanctioning them for quite a while. So, I mean, if you're a Petros, that you're selling the raw materials that keep the world going, there's some knowledge knowing that if you really want to, you can cause more chaos within Europe. And we're also seeing that with bombing of infrastructure in Ukraine. Like, I don't see a situation right now where Russia is going to be meaningfully impacted because they've positioned themselves in the supply chain that, if you're a Western democracy, you can only go so far before your constituents really start questioning how far am I willing to go for folks that don't live, that aren't within my own country.
Yeah. Sal, Monday is 3 days away. How much past that, if at all any, do we figure out if this is a good or possibly excessively bad idea?
Well, I think you're going to find out very quickly whether it's a good or bad idea come Monday, because number one, Europe and the United States and the other countries involved have to find substitutions for that Russian crude. And OPEC is meeting this weekend. We're going to see if they're going to up their production capacity. If not, you're going to be missing that crude from the refineries, which means we'll have shortages in gasoline and diesel in some areas. We're already seeing that right now. And what we're seeing is a bidding war between regions for this fuel oil. And the next aspect is the enforcement of the sanction. We already see Turkey, for example. They did this yesterday. They started requiring proof of insurance for vessels sailing between the Turkish straits. So ships are not coming out of the Black Sea right now without proof of insurance. Now, if the 13 P&I clubs withdraw their insurance, then what does Turkey do? Does Turkey start turning around Russian tankers coming out of the Black Sea? Because again, one of the things you see is you see tankers coming out of these Russian ports, but some of that fuel is from Kazakhstan, it's from Central Asia. And you have a potential for a confrontation in the Turkish Straits. Do the Danes, Norwegians, and Swedes shut off the Baltic to Russian tankers coming out of St. Petersburg? There's going to be a real big question about this enforcement agencies and how they're willing to do it. Right now, they're trying to do it through financial means, but it may develop into more extreme means. And I think that's the dangerous scenario that we're looking at here.
Thomas, what do you think is the more likely situation if we figure out that this is not a good idea? One, the EU, the G7 kind of pull back and say, all right, we can't stop this, we'll pay full price, or do they double down and go after this as hard as they can and just say, no, we can't, we're not going to take the oil at all?
Well, I think we're going to see a doubling down because, I mean, what's happening is, unfortunately, Ukraine is representative of a very larger geopolitical trend where we are trying to battle for energy. This is a battle for energy. Russia has a very large share of the marketplace. They're able to make these decisions. And so, for Europe, and even the U.S., it's advantageous to try and curtail their influence. You really don't want to have this kind of leverage. I think it's fascinating. It's really good for American crude oil production because we're the ones who have large Permian Basin reserves that we can kind of weather the storm. And then Europe's going to have to use some of our energy. I mean, American shipping, if I'm LNG and stuff, they build a terminal in like a few weeks or something in Germany. So it's fascinating because the thing that we're not really talking about, we're saying, of course with Ukraine, we're stand by Ukraine, all the solidarity. But let's interject a little realpolitik here. Let's be very honest. I think European nations will have to be honest with their people and say, look, we told you it was about Ukraine. Really, it's about the, fate of the whole current geopolitical Western-led world order. And Russia doesn't like it. They repeatedly said it in their speeches. China is, an aspirant to try and become a hegemon as well. I mean, let's just be real with ourselves and stop beating around the bush and say, look, you're going to be in for some pain, but the current system that we have been doing is changing and it's going to be weird.
Yeah, it certainly looks like that way. Sal, let me get your gut feeling on this. How does this quote unquote end? Whether it be 6 months, whether it be 15 years, are we going to get through this okay, or are we just mounting upon ourselves more and more catalysts that could lead to a confrontation?
I think we have an example here of politicians enacting a logistics supply chain solution and not fully understanding the implications of either the supply chain or what the political ramifications can be. Like I said, my dark scenario here is what happens if Turkey starts turning around Russian tankers coming out. We've already seen operations of moving illegal oil through the Iranian-Venezuelan network. This is just an expanding of it with the shadow fleet and what the Russians are putting together. They can't back down. The G7 and the EU can't back down with this. They've drawn the line in the sand, or the water in this case, and they can't back down, which means they've got to go and enforce it. The problem is the mechanism they've used to determine this is one that's really outside their control, because what if the Russians get around the insurance method and are able to do it, or they're selling below that price cap? Even if they lower the price cap and Russian oil begins to drop even further, is this really impacting them? And Russia's in this for the long haul. Their objective is to defeat Ukraine economically, militarily, whichever way they can do it.
Gotcha. Thomas, your gut feelings, does this end, again, kind of peacefully, or are we in for a confrontation somewhere?
I think we're just beginning. Even looking at historical trends and stuff, we're seeing a change in terms of how the, post-USSR, U.S.-led world order that we've really been able to secure with our, we secured the world's trade with our fleets. We managed to have this very globalized system. And right now, this globalized system is going through changes. I'm expecting these are just the beginning skirmishes in an overall war currently of supply chains and economies. Hopefully it doesn't get hot, because you would hate to see the EU stopping flagged vessels and saying, are you flying the right paperwork, and then having an international incident.
Gotcha. Well, it's certainly going to be more than interesting as this Monday comes and goes, and we'll see how things pan out. Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us.
Appreciate it, Bill.
All right, we will take a break, and we'll come back after this.
The 2023 Freight Tech 25 list is filled with meaningful innovators from across the industry who are helping shape what the future of supply chain will look like. Check out the full list of these companies and all the latest freight tech news at FreightWaves.com.
Hold on a second, Tony. See that? No scrapes, no scuffs, no damage. Thank you. Because we make sure each pallet is touched as few times as possible, and that is handled with care, no matter where it's going. That's the precision you get from a nationwide LTL freight company with over 35 years of industry-leading experience, an entire team that's driven to deliver on time and damage-free.
XPO, your freight, first.
What are you doing up there, Bert?
The RXO folks want us to demo their technology.
That's smart.
Yeah, not really. My beak doesn't work so well on this tablet.
Well, they're paying us now, so.
I know, here goes. Our customers' freight is seamlessly moved anywhere in North America using RXO's digital platform to access over 1.5 million trucks.
That sounded good.
I think I broke my beak.
Massive capacity, cutting edge technology. RXO.
welcome back to FreightWaves Now. I'm Sydney Edwards with a last look at our headlines for the day. Now, Air Canada is in the horse transportation business once again. It's a move made possible by the introduction nearly 1 year ago of wide-body freighters to the passenger fleet. Air Canada Cargo announced last month the start of an equine transportation service using specially designed stalls that can carry up to 3 animals. The new service builds on a legacy of experience gained during an earlier era when the airline operated all cargo aircraft and from processing horses for other airlines at a holding area at its Toronto hub. Air Canada retained its live animal handling facility for horses at Toronto Pearson International Airport, providing hotel services for other airlines despite the shift to an all-passenger fleet. The barn is a stopping-off point where horses can rest, eat, drink, and be checked by their veterans before being loaded on aircraft or onto outbound horse trailers. It is located away from the noisy warehouse area to minimize stress on the animals. And Walgreens is upping the ante on its demand e-commerce. The health and wellness retailer said on Thursday it introduced a 24/7 delivery service, offering delivery from nearly 400 stores in as little as 1 hour. Participating 24-hour Walgreens stores will offer more than 27,000 items from groceries to over-the-counter medications to household essentials like toothbrushes and skincare products. The service is available in most states, but is not currently running in Alaska, Colorado, Iowa, Maine, North Dakota, and a few other states that we have listed online. Now, customers can place an order with the nearest store and have it fulfilled if they are within the delivery range. Walgreens says it's the first health and wellness retailer to offer such a service and that no other retailers offer as many items for round-the-clock delivery. Now you can find these details and even more happening at FreightWaves.com. And if you're watching on our YouTube channel, whether it's live or on demand, give us a like and subscribe to stay updated. You'll get the full FreightWaves TV experience by logging on to tv.freightwaves.com. I'll hand this on over now to Anthony Smith and Thomas Wasson for the rest of the show.
Thomas, I am a sucker for that type of convenience. And so you tell me I can get around-the-clock delivery? I might just order something just for the heck of it.
I would, just to test it, see how it works. But speaking of testing things and what works, we have What the Truck coming up as well. Action-packed show, net zero carbon, mad gains live, and running on ice with our very own Sydney Edwards, who you just heard with our top stories.
I'll be tuning in for that one. And we also have our very own John Kingston with Drilling Deep. That's going to be on a little bit later as well. And Thomas, we have one more event happening in just a couple of weeks, and be sure you get registered for that one. It's going to be the Domestic Supply Chain Summit, and you're going to have a pretty big part in that one.
Definitely interviewing Dr. David Carroll with MIT's Freight Lab. Learn about research, learn about fun. That's going to be it, though, for today, folks. Join us on Monday, 9 a.m. sharp Eastern. We'll do it live.